The new birth certificate is here. Now listen, I'm going to show you some things the mainstream media will not show you. Oh yeah, sure, they could release this birth certificate and 100 birth certificates, but no. What the mainstream media and the president doesn't want you to see is right here. Place of birth, Kenya. Right here. Mother's mailing address, 666 Muslim Street. Yeah. They don't want to show you that. No. Can we please move on from the president's birth certificate? Please, I'm begging you. The world is burning down. And we're talking about Donald Trump getting credit for a birth certificate and what it says on his birth certificate. How about we talk about real issues? In fact, we've been talking about the real issues like the Fed, etc., etc. How about we talk tonight about some solutions? Tonight, I want to show you something. This book over here was given to me by a friend just last weekend. And I actually opened it up and read part of it. It's a very old book from the 1920s. There's only 500 of these in the world. And it's called The Holy Experiment. The Holy Experiment is an amazing, amazing book that it covers the Holy Experiment, which is, can man rule himself? Now, I know all these people are going to write in and say, oh, this woman loved Woodrow Wilson. She was a socialist. No. It was done by an artist who was way whacked out of her mind. But it's brilliant, and it has the answers. Tonight, The Holy Experiment and courage to find it. Yes. Tonight we have a live studio audience and a couple of special guests right in the front too, because I want to talk about courage. And these two gentlemen know a little something about courage, personal courage themselves, and also a couple of figures from history, Gandhi and Dietrich Bonhoeffer. By the way, have I said hello? Hello, America. The Fed had its first press conference today in almost a century. Nobody's paying any attention to it because the birth certificate finally came in. The thing that Bernanke has been doing makes no sense. It only makes sense if you are trying to bankrupt America. The Fed's actions are a big reason why the stock market hit its highest level since June 2008. It's painfully clear the stock market shouldn't be doing this. Why is it happening? Why is your gas going up? Why are you paying more for food? Well, because they're printing money. They're printing money and they're inflating it. They're taking it right out of your bank account. Now, here's something else that doesn't make any sense. No one says anything about it. Worse still, the focus was on the president's birth certificate today and Donald Trump's victory lap that he made. Even though it was like 5 minutes ago that Trump was saying that his investigators had found incredible evidence in Hawaii. What is it? Why is it that more people care about what Donald Trump is saying than what the Fed is doing? Why is this? Is it a lack of education? Maybe it is. Are we more up on reality TV than reality? How else can you explain America's completely blowing off a high-level union official at SEIU caught on tape plotting to sabotage the United States stock market and overthrowing the United States government?
I think we need to have a very simple strategy. How do we bring down the stock market? How do we bring down their bonuses? How do we interfere with their ability to be rich? And if we don't do, and that means you have to politically isolate them, economically isolate them, and disrupt them.
Okay. This is a man from the president's favorite union, and he's trying to take down America's economic system and overthrow the government of the United States. But nobody's up in arms about that. Why? Why the apathy? Why don't they take this guy seriously? Or is it that people don't have any idea what to do about it? I mean, honestly, when we got that tape, we didn't know who to call. Do I call the Department of Justice? Are they part of the problem? Is that it? It's not just a crazy person or two. You're seeing more and more, especially now in our schools. I want to show you a couple of videotapes here. Here's a school teacher on tape talking about the most effective ways to insert the teachings of Karl Marx into the classroom for children. Watch.
How do you actually, as a teacher in a classroom, kind of promote ideas of Marxism or to kind of begin to fight for those things? I think, part of it is that particularly at a high school level or an elementary school level, you have to be careful, because your job, they want you to stick to fairly narrow things, and that can be very frustrating. But I do think that wherever you possibly can, part of it is actually just allowing for room for critical thought in the classroom and allowing for students to think for themselves, to talk about issues wherever possible, to bring in history and radicals and the past and fight for that kind of thing. And I think there is space to do that, even if there's limitations on it, that we have to do to try to provide that room in our classrooms. I think radicals and socialists have a particular role to play in kind of fighting for that type of education.
So why is it that people aren't up in arms? The Federation of Teachers in California, an arm of AFL-CIO, they're supporting a cop killer. Why? Why aren't people up in arms? Then you have a member of the Revolutionary Socialist who wants to recruit younger and younger members. Watch this.
We have to get even younger people. I mean, there's no reason why junior high school students and first and second year high school students can't become not only in the party and in the movement, but leaders themselves. And I think we should really try hard to recruit younger and younger people.
Junior high. They might be dreaming it up, but many others are getting it done. Let me show you a teacher now who got their kids to sing at Riverwood Elementary School in Tennessee. Stop the tape. Here the kids are singing, "Boycott, petition, let the big business know." Really? Now, if you had a child in this class, would you be outraged? Would you say something? Would you stand up and say, "What the hell is going on?" I'm sure there were a lot of people that were upset in this school, but one parent, one, had the courage to stand up and say something about it. One. You will meet her tomorrow on this program. She's a fan of the program. She videotaped this. She went to the principal. You won't believe the conversation. Eric Holder has said that we are a nation of cowards.
In things racial, we have always been, and we, I believe, continue to be, in too many ways, essentially a nation of cowards.
We are a nation of cowards? Not, I'm sorry, sir, when it comes to race. There is something that has changed in the 1960s. I don't know if you noticed it. But people are becoming more and more courageous, even when they're called a racist. Especially for the Tea Party. People are always trying to point them and paint them as racist. Well, here's a guy who's at a Tea Party, and he's approaching someone in some sort of a Nazi outfit. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't higgledy-piggledy run and introduce myself to Nazis. This is not an act of a coward. He's trying to root out a racist. Watch.
Are you a racist? Are you a Nazi?
Yes, I'm proud to be a racist.
Why don't you leave? Because we're not.
I'm not a Nazi. I'm a proud racist. I'm white.
I'm white. He's here trying to pretend that we're racist, okay?
Anybody's here to pretend. No, I'm not.
Well, just know
That was convincing.
that
All right,
we don't
stop.
represent...
In a group, we have more courage because we have support around us. But it's different when we're alone. Now, this guy was essentially alone. When we're alone, when we're sitting even in a crowd, but we don't know everybody around, we don't know that everybody thinks like we do, the indoctrination to shh works. Places like our children's schools, with our friends and our neighbors, in public settings. Ask yourself, do you have real personal courage? Personal courage is going to be tougher and tougher in the coming days. You are going to have powerful unions. You are going to have thugs. You are going to be under threat to lose your job, lose your pensions, lose everything for what you say and what you do. And they're not going to mess around. Do you remember what Andy Stern said?
We took names. We watched how they voted. We know where they live.
Oh, they do know. And they'll show up on your front lawn. What do you do when they show up at your doorstep and your children are inside? Will you stand up for what you believe? Sometimes I wonder myself how much personal courage I have. It is easier for me to do this show because I know you're watching. I know that I'm not alone. But how much personal courage do I really have? How much personal courage do you have? Some videos keep hitting the internet, and I see it as a sign of individual courage fading in America. Now, it could be a sign that just more people have video phones than they used to. I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think it's courage and love that are missing. Look at all these videos that keep popping up. A fight at Denny's reportedly broke out over maple syrup. One table didn't have maple syrup, so they asked the other, can we have some? Naturally, turns into a brawl over maple syrup. Lack of love, compassion, respect, and courage. Courage, because look at the people. Look at the people standing around. More people are videotaping than helping. That's not help. That's not help. Here's a Burger King riot that broke out. One girl goes nuts. She jumps on the counter and she just starts throwing things. She's about to jump on the counter. There she is. She just starts throwing things. What do the onlookers do? Help her calm down? No. No, they start throwing stuff too. What caused this madness? The order was taking too long. Then there's one more I want to show you. You've probably seen this. This just happened. If you have kids, I just think this is so horrible and tragic. Here is a girl at a McDonald's reportedly looking the wrong way at another person's man. It prompted this. Now, this girl is completely helpless. Now, here's the worker kind of helping, but they keep coming back and kicking and kicking and kicking. The employee makes a half-hearted effort to stop it, but here's where it really gets ugly. She gets hit in the head so many times she begins to have seizures. Now, I'm warning you, my daughter, there she is, my daughter has seizures, and I know how frightening a seizure is. It is tough to watch this. But the worst part of it is there is no one stepping in to help her. I know how my daughter feels when she has a seizure. Will no one step in? Are we afraid? The only thing the person says that is filming it says she's bleeding, yo. He warns the assailants to leave before the cops arrive. We are not going to survive as a nation if we can't change this behavior. Now, if you thought the seizure was bad, one last thing I want to show you. It's more graphic than the last I asked you to have your kids look away. Turn off the TV, make them leave the room. This is a man. He is 24-year-old Trevon Wynn. He was in town visiting relatives. He's from South Carolina. He was here in New York. He's got one young daughter. His relatives report that he was really excited because the second was on the way, and he will never get a chance to meet or hold his unborn child because of this. This is a surveillance video here in New York. Now watch. Now watch him. He's moving. He's trying to get up. Now here is, to me, the worst part. He was shot point blank. To make the tragedy worse, these two guys come out. The police say this is a case of mistaken identity. As Trevon is struggling to breathe and move, no one, not one person, no one bothers to kneel down and at least comfort him in his last moments. No one, as he is staring at the cement, no one kneels down to him and holds his hand and says, "Don't worry, help is on the way." Instead, he's laying there, his last images of life being the concrete of New York, and feet standing around him doing nothing. His mother watched this footage. I apologize. Can you imagine what she felt? Here's what she said, quote, "What kind of city is this? No one helped my child? Someone could have helped him. Someone could have turned him over on his side to help him breathe. It's a nightmare I will never recover from. He wasn't in a gang. He didn't know anyone here. I saw the video, and when I saw it, I walked out of the room. It will be forever engraved in my memory. I saw my child fall on the floor, and no one tried to help him. I have asked you this recently. Who are we turning into? We are turning into a nation of people that are afraid. We are turning into a people, we have never been a nation that had a problem with charity and compassion. We always have been that, and now it seems we videotape until help arrives. When did we become the help arrives people? We're always the help, not the people standing around. What is happening to us? We are losing the common bond of love and courage. That's what's missing in all of these stories. People don't get beat over syrup, or they don't get a wayward glance to a boyfriend and then go into a seizure because they've been kicked in the head, or die because they picked the wrong corner to stand on, and then they die alone. If you have love, if you have compassion, if we actually care about one another, we can't keep pitting ourselves against each other. It doesn't mean we don't turn over the tables once in a while. It doesn't mean we don't point out what's wrong. It means we stand up, and yet we have compassion. Courage to stand. And courage has many different forms. Before 8/28, here's what the Black Panthers said of us meeting on the mall at the Lincoln Memorial.
For him to go and to secure the Lincoln Memorial on Dr. King's birthday will meet not only opposition from civil rights leaders, but it's going to meet direct opposition from the new Black Panther Party. Since the Tea Party loves Glenn Beck and will be there, the new Black Panther Party can easily find the Tea Party right with Glenn Beck. And so he can bring his Tea Party and we'll bring our party.
They tried to frighten you. It was an act of courage. With the threat of trouble, thousands, dare I say it, CBS, hundreds of thousands came with their families and children. Courage begins with the individual. Everyone in that crowd started out like Scott Moore, packing, getting ready to go. I showed you a video last night of a German woman standing up to radical Islamists preaching hate in Germany. She stood up and she said, "I am ashamed because no one would say anything. I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed that someone could stand here and speak like Hitler. Where is everybody? Why are people not standing up in this country of ours?" That is courage. A woman all by herself, yelling at her countrymen. I received a phone call on radio a few days ago that I think I will cherish for a very long time. She is a woman that said that she had heard me say stand up on TV and radio a million times. She almost got to the point of rolling her eyes when I would say it. Stand up. She thought to herself, I know, I'll stand up. I'll stand up. I'm courageous. Well, she went to Chicago and she attended one of the recent stage shows that I did. And I was talking about courage and a willingness to stand. And I said, there's going to come a time when you're going to know, stand. Now, I didn't tell her to stand up, but she heard in herself, I should stand up. Well, she didn't. She was too worried about what others would think or how they would react. So she didn't stand. She called me. It was after the weekend. She called me that first Monday and apologized to me. She said, I'm sorry, I thought I was courageous, and there I was in a room full of people that I trusted, and I didn't do it. She said, I will never ignore that again. This is the part I cherish. Courage is a muscle. She learned. She's got to exercise it. Personal courage is going to be required in the coming months and years. Maybe more from you or maybe more from your children. And there will be every excuse not to stand. You might lose a job, your pension, your friends. What will your family say? Your union. Can you stand up against your union? It'll be tougher for my kid if I speak out. Whatever the excuse is. And before you say, oh, you know, it's not going to be tougher. Really? I'm not the one who predicted. These guys predicted that it would fall apart in the end. I'm going to show you by the end of the hour this book. This book is The Holy Experiment. What is the Holy Experiment? The Holy Experiment is, can man rule himself? Can he rule himself? The answer is yes, he can, but not without two things. Love for one another, and that includes the truth, and courage. I go back to the guy visiting from South Carolina that was here in New York. We all have a role in the end. We all have a role to play. In the end, will we be the person that comforts and teaches others to comfort, or the person that missed the opportunity to teach courage and find ourselves alone, lying on the ground? I brought in two friends that can speak on a couple of different people of real courage, and one of them is Eric Metaxas. He is the author of Bonhoeffer, Pastor, Martyr, Prophet, Spy, and Dinesh D'Souza, president of King's College and author of The Roots of Obama's Outrage, or Obama's Rage. Both are books that you should read and have and pass on to others. Let me start with you. Dietrich Bonhoeffer has become a hero of mine, mainly because of your book.
Would you recommend the book?
Yeah. Yes. He's become a hero of mine because he was amazingly courageous. Was he that kind of guy, or did he? Are people like that born that way, or are they made?
A little bit of both. Bonhoeffer was raised in, and of course I assume all of your viewers have already read the book, so I'm just going to,
yeah.
But basically he was born into an amazing family. I mean, in the book I go into the family because you can hardly believe what an amazing family is. They were trained, these kids, to think clearly, to figure out what you believe, and then to act on it. And if you don't act on it, you're a hypocrite. You don't really believe it. It's an amazing thing that they were trained this way. So he was raised in a family this way. But of course when the Nazis came to power, things changed, because suddenly now you had to live this. And he really, I think it came principally from his faith. He was a devout Christian. The word courage, ironically, is French, haha, and it means heart, right? To have heart, to be a person of integrity, to know who you are, what you believe, and then to act out of that, not to have any daylight between what you say you believe and how you behave.
And I find it interesting that it is people that he was raised in that family. And that's why I said in the opening monologue that when you're at school, and this happened between my wife and I, we'll be driving home and she'll have not said something, or I have not said something and said, oh, I would have made things worse. Our children are listening and they hear that. That's not training them to be people of courage. Now, Bonhoeffer wanted to meet Gandhi. He thought Gandhi had the answer. But Dinesh, you don't think that in that particular case, Gandhi would have worked?
Well, Gandhi had a different situation. The British were very different than Hitler. They were tyrannical in that they were ruling India. But Gandhi's strategy, which was nonviolence, mass protest, lying down in front of the train tracks, very dramatic. But if Hitler had been in power, the trains would have kept going.
Right.
One of my professors at Dartmouth used to say, if Hitler was in power in India, Gandhi would be a lampshade. It's kind of a harsh way of putting it, but he would have dealt with Gandhi. Right. So Gandhi knew that, and he developed a strategy aimed at producing, you might say, the repentance of the tyrant. In other words, Gandhi was out to convince the British that they were wrong, and he knew that he could do that by appealing to Western principles. So Gandhi's ideas of nonviolence did not so much come out of Hinduism. They came out of Christianity and out of British.
Okay, and so that's why Bill Ayers failed here in the 1960s when they were blowing things up, because America is not Nazi Germany.
Exactly. The Martin Luther King strategy, which was derived from Gandhi, which appealed to American goodness. When King said, I'm submitting a promissory note, he was referring to the Declaration of Independence.
America, please, did you just hear that? Did you just hear that? It is the Martin Luther King model, and that's why they're destined to lose. They're destined to lose because they're still using thuggish force, and that doesn't work. They're mocking, they're imitating Martin Luther King's movement here in America. They're thuggish behind, so they're destined to lose. Now, this is also why Bonhoeffer, in the end, flipped, because he came into it as a pacifist.
Right.
In the end, he was the guy that was plotting Hitler's death.
And it wasn't just a calculation on his part. I think it needs to be said in the case of Bonhoeffer, and I think in all our cases, Bonhoeffer would say you have to have a relationship with God, a personal relationship, because at some point principles and ideas are empty. In other words, you say, well, what do we apply here? What do we apply here? He made a calculation as the Nazis became more powerful. He said, God is leading me into getting involved in this conspiracy against Hitler. If he didn't feel God was leading him to do that, he wouldn't have done it. And because he believed God was leading him to do this, he had the courage. He didn't care what people thought. There were people around him, people he respected, who looked down their noses at him. They thought, what are you doing? You're Mr. Pacifist, Mr. Anti-Nazi, now you're working for the Abwehr. It didn't make any sense. He was playing to an audience of one, and that was God. That's important to say.
There are two very distinct paths. Gandhi's is the right path, and for this nation, Bonhoeffer understood that at the beginning, but was in the wrong setting. Please read these men, and read about these men as much as you can. First, the books, again, that you must read is The Roots of Obama's Rage and Bonhoeffer by Eric Metaxas. Be careful on the Bonhoeffer books. Make sure you get that one, because the left has tried to co-opt and distort him, and Eric has said it right. Back in just a second. Today, we have a live studio audience, and we're going to be with an audience again tomorrow. You don't want to miss tomorrow's program. I'm going to introduce you to a few people over the next couple of days that are answering the call of courage. Everyone is familiar with the Defense of Marriage Act, right? And that it passed, and then it was challenged in the court. Well, when we have a challenge, usually the DOJ would step in and defend it. That's what their job is. Well, they didn't want to defend it. President Obama didn't think it was really worth defending, so they just let it go. So a private firm picked the case up. Well, here's where the bullies come in. They start getting hammered with phone calls. This law firm gets hammered with phone calls and pressured. And so all these activists force this law firm to reconsider, and they drop the case. We're trying to teach our kids about bullies in school. And boy, are we teaching them every day, because we let the bullies win every day. Except this case. Paul Clement is a lawyer. Now, I don't know if he's for or against the Gay Marriage Act. I have no idea. I don't care. Neither should you. To me, he's a modern-day John Adams. His law firm was getting all kinds of pressure from special interest groups, and they couldn't handle it. It reminds me of John Adams when he was approached by a British soldier who needed to have some representation. Remember this scene from the HBO film?
It's the last thing an accused person should lack in a free country. There we go.
Then accept it.
But will I be condemned for it?
They will say you are the Crown's man.
I care not for malicious tongues on either side.
What is the difference between John Adams and Paul Clement? I really don't think there is one. Again, I don't know the guy if he supports gay marriage or doesn't. But let me take you to the hairy back guy. Remember this guy that plotted 9/11? Okay, the hairy back guy. Man, if it was me, I'd have him. I would have, what do you call it, duct tape. And I'd just be ripping it off his back all the time. I've made up my mind on him. You don't want me in the jury box against that guy. I've made my mind. But you are innocent until proven guilty in America. You are entitled to a vigorous defense. Not an immoral one, but a vigorous one. I would not vilify any attorney that was defending the hairy back guy, unless it was Lynn Stewart, who helped convicted terrorists, the guy who bombed the World Trade Center the first time. She was helping him pass notes from prison to his terrorist friends. She's now in prison where she belongs. But if she were an honest attorney and said, I just want to give them a vigorous defense, I have no problem. I applaud you. That is the justice system that we need to let the whole world see. Mr. Obama always says we'd have to let the whole world see how justice works. Well, it doesn't work in America if you bully people. But Clements' law firm caved under pressure when things got a little bit too uncomfortable. Well, I hope they go out of business, quite frankly. Clements said, to be clear, I take this step not because of strongly held views about the statute. I resign out of the firmly held belief that representation should not be abandoned because the client's legal position is extremely unpopular in certain quarters. Defending unpopular positions is what lawyers do. The adversary system of justice depends on it, especially in cases where the passions run high. Efforts to delegitimize any representation for one side of a legal controversy are a profound threat to the rule of law. We don't have people calling up, and do we expect them or respect them when they're defending a crack dealer? I would say the same thing. They must have good, vigorous legal defense. Clement said he will keep working on this case at his new employer, a much smaller law firm that I hope grows 3 sizes that day. My point is, personal courage is going to be required. And just like this example today, you must be prepared to lose everything, your pension, your job. So in the end, you don't lose your honor. Because in the end, that is the only thing that counts. In the end, that will be the only thing your children will remember. Was he an honorable man? Was she an honorable woman? It doesn't matter the topic. When the bullies come out, and they will, sometimes that's when a man stands alone. We have a historic opportunity to rise up and support people who are standing alone, even if you disagree with them. Because one day, you may need them by your side, need someone to stand by you. To me, this is the quintessential American story. Give me liberty or give me death. We can learn so much from history. Abraham Lincoln. Look at Frederick Douglass, being told that the Constitution was a document to enslave people. His answer was unbelievable. When's the last time, if ever, you actually read his response? It is such an epic takedown. You'll read and go, oh my gosh. At one point in the middle of it, he just says, so enough of the 3/5 clause, let's move on. I mean, it's an epic takedown. It wasn't a popular stance, but he did it because he believed it was right. You can see that at glennbeck.com. Go there now and read it. Share it with your kids. Tell them the story. We've had these examples with MLK. His house was bombed because he supported the Montgomery bus boycott, but he continued to preach nonviolence. Bobby Kennedy, who stood up to the unions in the 1950s. We have heroes in America everywhere, dotting our history. But I think our first American hero on this front may be John Adams. The question is, we have them all throughout history. The real question is, will America have them in the future? Back in a minute. I want to show you a book that a friend of mine said he has been looking for this book for me for years, and they're very rare. There was only 500 of them made in 1920. I don't know how many remain. It is a book here. It is a book called The Holy Experiment, and it was put together by Violet Oakley, who was a very progressive, loved Woodrow Wilson. I mean, just a nightmare. I don't want to have her dinner with her, but it's a beautiful, beautiful book. And The Holy Experiment really is America. America. Can man rule himself? The answer is yes. But look, if you will, at this book as I turn these pages. Look how beautiful this is. I mean, it's unbelievable. And it's all about America and what it took. And this is a quote from William Penn. "Seek and ye shall find, I testify for God. Oh, it is a travail, a spiritual travail. And through this path you must walk to the city of God, and as eternal foundations, if ever you will come there. Amen, says one that God has long since mercifully favored with his heavenly visitation, and who is not disobedient to the heavenly vision and call, to whom the way of truth is more lovely and precious than ever, and that knowing the beauty and benefit of it above all worldly treasures has chosen it for his chiefest joy, and therefore recommends it to thy love and choice, because he is, with great sincerity and affection, thy soul's friend, William Penn. Now I want to take you here. In the back of this book, there are amazing paintings. These are all from the interior of the Capitol building in Pennsylvania. This is Gettysburg. It is for us living rather to be dedicated to the unfinished work. But it is this painting that I saw on Saturday morning about 1 a.m. that really caught my eye. It is of George Washington. It's George Washington at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, May 1787. There is a quote from George Washington above it. Let us raise a standard to which the wise and honest can repair the events in the hand of God. I want to take a moment, because this I pondered for about an hour. This is the answer we're looking for. He was talking to the men there, but he was challenging us here today. I want to go into that next. So here is a scene. This is actually painted in the State House, the Senate chamber in Pennsylvania. Let us raise a standard to which the wise and honest can repair the events in the hand of God. He is talking, this is George Washington, he's speaking at the Constitution Convention. Now, this actually was said by George Washington when they said, some of the guys were like, we can't get this. I can't get this for my constituents. I got to give them some, basically, I got to give them some pork. I got to put some stuff in there that's going to make them happy. And Washington stood fast. And that's when he stood up and he said, let us raise a standard. He first said, before this line, he said, and I'm paraphrasing, my apologies to anybody who has a photographic memory, but I don't. Paraphrasing, what he said was, how can we, if we disagree with those things, how could we possibly put them in and then live with ourselves in the end? How can we defend it in the end? And I don't think he meant in the end like, you know, a few years down the road. I think he meant in the end. How can we defend it? We were just talking, Eric, about definition of a standard. It's not like the gold standard. What is it?
Well, I remember when I was reading in Scripture, there's a famous Scripture verse. It says, when the devil comes in, God will raise up a standard against him. And everybody thinks standard, it's like a gold standard, but it means like a battle flag.
Right. It's those things that they used to carry into war.
Right.
Standard. So you could see it.
Right.
And that was the point. You could see it. You knew we were advancing or we were going back. You knew where your people were. It was a standard that you would watch. It's the city on the hill. It's a standard that you can see. The ancient Israelites would put the temple up, and their tent had the doors open to it so you could see it. It would be a standard that you could see. Okay? He's saying, here, let us raise a standard. He's telling them. And then he makes a challenge or a promise to them about us, that the wise and the honest can repair. He knew it would be soiled. He knew it would fall into disrepair. But he knew at that time, and my question, my challenge to you is, are we an honest and wise people? Because he knew it would fall into disrepair, and we would have to fix it. But only the wise and honest will be able to do it. Back in a minute.
Hi, I'm Trey.
Tonight, I want you to go to glennbeck.com and check out a section called Rumors of War, the Last Days. I guarantee what you will see there will scare the living pants off of you, but it will give you perspective and context about what's happening in our world tonight. Rumors of War, The Last Days, only at glennbeck.com. Check it out now. From New York, good night, America.